The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky, and today I'm very excited to have and welcome Devon O'Rourke. Devon, welcome.
Thanks so much, Michael. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. So, Devon, for those who aren't familiar with you and your work, you are the founder and managing partner at Fluvio, a product marketing consulting firm that you started in 2020. So 3 or so years ago, and you've now, you've worked with clients like NASDAQ, Stack Overflow, LinkedIn, and a whole bunch of others. And then you previously held marketing roles at companies like Amazon and Etsy. Excited to have you on and to dive into our conversation here today because you've grown your consulting business pretty rapidly. You've accomplished a lot in, kind of 3-ish or so years. And I think that people can really learn from your experiences of how you went about doing that. Lessons learned, maybe things that you look back on going like, wow, we probably could have gotten a better result not going the path that we had gone. But let's just kind of start off, like, where did you get the idea for this company, for Fluvio?
Yeah, I'll start by saying like my mentality, I'd always worked for these large companies. You noted Amazon, Etsy, worked at ESPN in the past and some other large ones. I never thought of myself as working in these really large companies for a very long time. And so I always, in the back of my head, was thinking, okay, how can I go out on my own or join a really young company and go smaller? And while I was at Amazon, I was trying to hire for my team. I was a product marketer over there. And I just found it exceptionally challenging to find really great senior product marketers who knew what they were doing. And it was taking 6 to 9 months to find folks. At the same time, I was being recruited very heavily, as I knew everyone else in product marketing was as well. It's one of those areas that has really become well established in the tech space, but it's just very hard to staff. And so it was a pretty basic problem, supply demand problem. And I began to think, well, if I'm having this much trouble at Amazon with our brand equity, it must be exceptionally challenging for younger companies that are maybe a little bit less known to find product marketers. And so I just started testing the idea, and I'm happy to go through that whole process, which was a long one. But yeah, that was the idea.
Yeah, no, I love that because I think what you've just kind of hit on there is you identified a problem, and like the classic entrepreneurial approach, you found a problem, you thought maybe I can solve this or solve it better than others have tried. But that's a pretty ambitious one in the sense that here you saw a company like Amazon who has significant resources still having challenges attracting the kind of talent that you were looking for and people and experienced people in a short period of time. What made you think that you could essentially build that bridge and create a solution where Amazon couldn't?
Yeah, good question.
And I'm not picking on I'm not picking on Amazon by any means. I'm sure it's an interesting example because it's such a large company with people would think almost infinite resources. And you have the audacity to think that you can solve this where they can't, but you've actually been able to. So what told you in that moment, just from a mindset perspective, maybe I can actually solve this?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of confidence in myself, frankly. I think that it sort of starts there. And I sort of look back at my career and recognize that I did really well, sort of establishing product marketing, doing really great work. And so I was really betting on myself. And when I had this idea, I did always have the idea that I'd create a firm around this. This is going to be a company. It's not going to be me. I'm not going to be a solo consultant. And I'm happy to chat about the differences there that I've experienced. But my intention always was I'm going to create a company around this, of which, of course, I will be the first person, and I'll have to prove the validity of this offering by virtue of my own hours. But I never wanted to end there. And so I created the company, Fluvio, and Fluvio Marketing LLC is technically our legal name. I created that while I was still at Amazon and started testing the idea while I was still there and got a couple very small projects. I'll just call them projects, but not real large clients that would enable me to leave Amazon. And I was just cold emailing people, a couple hundred people a week, and finally had one sort of big retainer-like client come through and say, yeah, we want to take you on board for 6 months. We just acquired this company. We need you to plug in and do really good product marketing work to figure out how we can sell this product better, how we can build a better roadmap, what do our customers care about. And so I came in and did that work myself and proved that it was valuable, and then sort of just been growing it from then on.
And Devon, what did that look like when you, in terms of the emails and the outreach? So you're still working at Amazon, you're sending a couple hundred or whatever emails per week. What did the actual email look like? What was your pitch or your message?
Yeah, it would be, so generally I was looking for companies that were trying to hire product marketing. So I would go, say, on LinkedIn, and I would see that this company has 2 senior product marketing roles open, or a VP of product marketing. And I would reach out to what I would assume to be the buyer, which in most cases would be the CMO or the CPO of these companies, sometimes the founder if it's really small. And I would say, looks like you're trying to staff product marketing. I know this is a challenge firsthand. I've built and led product marketing teams at companies like Amazon and Etsy, and I can come in and do that for you. I can set your foundation up for success. And that was pretty much the pitch. It was using my background, leveraging some of the logos of the companies that I've worked at, and providing this alternative to staffing. That was the initial sort of go-to-market. We've evolved over time, and now we're specializing, and it's obviously not about me. I've tried to remove myself from a lot of our core messaging and positioning. But yeah, that was the hook.
Devon, in the early days when you're sending, let's say 100 or so per week, how many replies, responses were you actually getting?
I would guess somewhere between like 2 to 4% responses of that, right?
Yeah.
So it was a numbers game, right? I just kept at it, and I would learn a little bit based on the responses. And again, I did probably 2 or 3 small projects. And over time, I really learned who the buyers were, the types of companies, what's our ideal, customer profile in terms of company size. And it evolved, but it was very low. Outbounding for something like we're building at the time, which is a brand new solution that doesn't really exist. It's not like I started this looking at other product marketing consulting companies. Rather, I did a quick search, product marketing consulting, and saw no one was doing this. And I was like, oh, this is something I can create. So it required education. It wasn't something that was on CPO and CMO's minds at the time.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, you still had the commitment and determination to move forward with this, even when you're getting such low response rates. I mean, many people would look at that and go, what I'm doing isn't working. Maybe I need to stop but what was telling you, like, from coming back to your mindset and your beliefs and who you are?
Yeah.
Even when you were seeing like very little response from sending 100 emails and doing that over weeks, what told you I need to keep doing this and not necessarily change to something completely different in terms of a tactic or an approach?
I just saw that product marketing as a discipline was going to become more and more critical over time. I think of product marketing, where familiar with the tech space, where product management was 10 years ago. Like, it's this nascent role that's more recently come to fruition. And I just was betting on the fact that was going to become an even more critical role. And I was seeing it internally at Amazon. I was seeing how we were staffing our team, and I was seeing what recruiters were coming to me with in terms of opportunities. So the underlying bet wasn't changing. I knew it would just take time to break in. And then I also was betting, once I get that first client that allowed me to leave Amazon, get enough of like a runway for me to be comfortable, I knew I'd have former colleagues or former managers or people in my network that would organically come knocking on my door when they saw that this was a thing.
And for you, when you talk about the runway, and of course, just feel free to share whatever you're comfortable with. What did that look like for you? Like, in terms of a percentage of your current income, like, how did you think about from the financial perspective? Like, what do I actually need before I can jump?
Yeah, I think you have to have, it's an independent sort of risk tolerance question, obviously. For me, I mean, calculating it, I probably got in that 6-month engagement, it was equivalent to probably 60-70% of my salary while I was at Amazon, not including some other factors like stock compensation and such, which obviously you get at some of these larger tech companies. It was certainly risky, but to me, not that risky, right? Because that's 6 months where I was getting paid a pretty decent amount worst case scenario, I leave Amazon, I do this for 6 months, it doesn't work out, and I could take it easy for a couple months and I could look for another job where I knew the market at that point was so strong, I would be able to get another job, no problem. So frankly, it just didn't feel that risky to me.
So the environment today is different than what we're recording right now, just turned May 2023. The world looks different than it did in 2020 in many ways. Companies are now going through a lot of layoffs or changes. Would you still approach it in the same way today if you were to start again, or like if you were back in that same place, or would you do anything differently?
I would definitely change the positioning and messaging for our services, which is what I've done now. So when I first started the business, I mentioned I looked for companies that were looking to hire. And so the problem back then was I need to staff a team. It needs to work really well. I can't find people in time. We're launching a new product. We're relaunching our platform. We're changing our pricing strategy. We don't have the people to do it. What am I going to do? And then enter Fluvio. We're a consulting company. We're experts. Deploy us for 6 months. We'll do that work and we'll help you hire. So that message is no longer the message today, because most of the companies that we're working with or prospects in our pipeline, they don't have hiring budget for the year. And the trigger for them to be interested in Fluvio is actually, we don't have hiring budget. We can't hire, but we still have these super critical initiatives underway that the CEO really, really cares about. And so how do we get this work done while not increasing the overhead of adding employees? And so we're becoming this more flexible option that can plug and play and usually is expensed differently and is more bearable, right? And we've done research and have learned that during recessions, consulting actually does fairly well from an industry standpoint. And of course, consulting is so broad, as you know more than anyone, but we feel pretty good about being this alternative solution to hiring and tackling some of these big problems.
Talk to me a little bit more about that shift of in positioning, because I think that's regardless of what industry people are in or what stage they're at in their consulting kind of business and journey. You just touched on something which is pretty dramatic, going from a company having a very clear budget because they're looking to hire to now saying, hey, we're actually going to target companies that don't have a budget for what we're specifically selling. So to me, that signals that you need to be much more strategic in the conversations that you have and how you position your offering as not something that is necessarily going to need budget to fund, but rather my sense is you're probably positioning around, we're ROI for you. We're going to actually help you. This is a real investment. So just talk to me a little bit more, for everybody here, how do you position your outreach and your conversations with buyers when they don't necessarily even have a budget for you, but you still end up becoming part of, they end up saying, yeah, this makes sense for us to make that investment. What does that look like from a kind of a framing conversation perspective?
Yeah, I will say broadly, it's really challenging for our work to be attributed to ROI. And that is an ongoing challenge that I think we're always going to face. We focus on really broad sort of business KPIs, of which we will not see our work come to fruition for potentially a year plus, right? So for example, if we're helping a company figure out what market to penetrate and what the messaging and positioning should be for their products, that might take 6 months to really be implemented successfully. And then it will take another 6 months, depending on how long their sales cycles are, to see if it's working. So it is that in itself, ROI, difficult conversation. But mostly what we're doing right now is a lot of inbound work. So we are getting people coming to our website, filling out our forms, reaching out to me, engaging with us on LinkedIn. And they're saying things like, our initiatives have moved away from growing client base and focusing on retaining our clients. And so we need to come in and have someone do win-loss analysis, understand how we can price more effectively, understand how to cross-sell to other products. And so we come in and do that work versus before it was, we need 10 new product marketers and it's pretty ambiguous, but we know that's what you do. Come on board and sort of do the work that those employees would do. We need to have a very definitive set of projects, or at least one major project that the CEO cares about in order for budget to be allocated.
And when you say that that shift in messaging is attributed to the shift in what kind of market conditions, meaning that when we kind of keep going and whether we end into, go deep into a recession or whatever. But as the market or the environment changes, do you foresee that you would also change your message? So maybe we kind of there's a rebound and now companies are hiring a lot again. Your message might then go back to that hiring side where there is a budget. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah. So I would say two things. One is the way I try to operate the business is exceptionally nimble. I mean, we're small. There's 10 of us today. I want to be able to make really quick iterative decisions. And I talk about that a lot. Messaging and positioning is one of those. Like our website is not static. Our, outbound approach, although we're not doing that much today, is going to change all the time. So I do anticipate us changing. I will say I like the fact that we've been able to focus more on these really high impact projects and being this really expert team that can be deployed to tackle these difficult go-to-market problems. I sort of like that more than being this alternative to hiring. It gives us a little bit more of a premium focus. And so I would like to be leaning more into what we're actually doing today, long-term. But of course, capturing new business as a means of being an alternative to hiring, I'll take that too.
Yeah. And you talked about how today you're doing less outbound and much more of your marketing is inbound. Walk me through, here you are today, right? Team of 10 currently, you're well into 7 figures per year in revenue. If we looked at your marketing as a book and there's, chapters inside of it, how have those chapters changed in terms of the marketing that you're doing from, let's say, getting to that first 100K per year or $500,000 per year or $1 million and now well into 7 figures? What are some of the different chapters or kind of key distinctions or shifts that you've made along the path of improving your marketing, getting into the point where it is today?
Yeah. So we've been pretty blessed with not having to do a lot of outbound work, and that is going to be changing. So right now we actually are going through testing, doing our own outbound email and calls, something we've never done before. We've tested here and there, but now we're actually going after it. We've signed a platform where we're deploying resourcing to do that. The intention there is that I understand as we grow beyond where we are today, we do need to have a little bit more predictability. I need to know month to month, quarter to quarter, how many prospect conversations we're going to have, how many proposals are going to go out, and sort of back into what revenue will be. Historically, we haven't been able to do that, but we also haven't had to do that because we've had so much inbound interest. Our marketing has been mainly focused on content on LinkedIn. I could do more here, but I try to be fairly active there. And over time, we've also built up a pretty robust set of articles on our blog, which is on a resource section of our website. And then we repurpose that content on our Fluvio company LinkedIn. That's been really great. If we look at SEO, we see we've continued to increase quarter over quarter thanks to those articles. And our consultants are all tasked with generating at least one article a quarter. That's a decent amount. If everyone's doing that once a quarter, and these are like well thought through pieces based on work we've done. These are not garbage articles. They take time and they're useful. I've made sure we're deployed there, focusing a lot on content and then repurposing. And then I will say another thing that I've really been focused on over the last year is partnerships, co-marketing through partnerships, forming revenue sharing agreements with companies that sit in our space but don't do exactly what we do, whether they're software businesses that are geared toward marketing or product, market research companies. So folks like that have been helpful in engaging in communities that our audience also engages with.
I love that. So I want to dig into that a little bit more. So you talked about being active on LinkedIn. What does that look like for you? How often are you on the platform? How often are you posting? And then what are you posting that you're finding is actually working for you?
Yeah, I personally post probably only like 2 or 3 times a week, which I know is not what I should be doing. I need to be doing more than that. I will do more than that, but that's currently what I'm doing. Our company page posts 3 times a week, and it usually is highlighting articles that we've written or highlighting events that like we're speaking at or I'm speaking at, panels that we're on. We've done a webinar that didn't do as well as we'd hoped, so we're postponing more webinars. That's the content. The focus is we want VPs of product marketing, CMOs and CPOs to get insight from us. It's never promotional. It's all like, here's a framework we use with the client to figure out what markets to pursue with their new product. Here's a framework that we recommend companies to use to build their sales narrative. Like, here are the people you need in the room in order to get alignment with product management and product marketing teams. It's meant to be very helpful and be something that isn't calling attention to our services.
Right. And so are you just simply publishing that content to your personal profile and then also to the company page and that's it? Or are you doing anything to amplify it or?
Yeah, I've recently been writing articles on our blog and then also creating a second version on LinkedIn articles because I know that LinkedIn, that algorithm is going to promote their article. That's actually been very successful. We get a lot of views when I write an article on there. Like if we launch a new service, we've done that twice in the last 6 months. I'll write up what it is, why we're doing it, why we're excited about it. And it'll be both on our blog and LinkedIn. And I'll focus primarily on LinkedIn. I have it on the blog just in case SEO will drive people there. But I know that I'll get 10x the impressions and far more engagement on LinkedIn than I will on our website.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
And then talking about the partnership side, because I think this is an area that so many consulting firms and even solo consultants just don't really spend much time on. It's really ripe for opportunity. So you mentioned software companies or others in the space. Maybe just walk through one or two examples if you can. And I'm very interested in like, how did you start that? Because I think people often have that hesitation like in their mind thinking, why would a company that I reach out to who's probably going to be bigger than we are, why would they want to partner with us? And how does that work? How do you kind of think about it? And what were the steps you took to achieve that?
Yeah, it started with I'll call them a community. They do a lot of things, but there's an organization called The Alliance. Their major community is called the Product Marketing Alliance. It's the field we operate in. And I have presented at their conferences, even in past when I was at Amazon. And when I started Fluvio, I just saw synergies between these things. There's a community trying to build credibility of the product marketing function. They're hosting events. They have workshops. They have a membership. They have a newsletter. Well, we're also focused on that same discipline, and our sort of missions are the same, but our services are different. And so I reached out to them and we ended up forming a partnership there where as companies they work with, whether it's workshopping or through their memberships or through their events, when they hear that someone might need help building product marketing and doing the work, then they'll sort of push them our way. And we have a rev share agreement there. So there's actually, a financial benefit to doing that. There's also no downside, really. I mean, if we don't do any business, then no money's exchanged, no harm, no foul. And so that proved to be successful in the early days in 2020. And since then, I've developed, I think, something, and I say I because I'm the one at the company that does it, but as a company, we've developed something like 9 partnerships. We have a software platform that's meant to manage go-to-market plans at tech companies whose users and buyers are users and buyers. And so now when we work with clients, we can say, we utilize this software product to do some of our work. We can expose them to that product and then say, this might be something you guys might want to use. And if they do, then we'll introduce that company and we'll get revenue opportunity through that and vice versa. As this product is deployed in dozens of tech companies, a lot of the times it's obvious that those teams are understaffed and the software platform that they're working with will learn that and say, hey, you might want to work with a consulting partner. And again, the commitment is really light. It's a really light commitment. And so my strategy has been, let's try to partner with a lot of companies that sit around our ecosystem, but don't step on any toes. And if business comes from that, great. If not, not a big deal. And worst case, at least we're building connections and we're building a broader audience.
Do each of the partnerships that you've now created, do they all have a rev share component to them? Or it sounds like a lot do, but...
I tried to. Yeah, I would say all but like 2. And then there's some other benefits to those. But yeah, mostly that's the structure that we try to build.
What's your thinking on that? Because oftentimes some will want a rev share, others don't really care about it, especially if it's like, we'll send people to you, you send people to us. But the rev share feels like there's just a bit more maybe incentive or commitment. And I'm wondering how you kind of feel about that.
Yeah, I think there's more commitment to it. I feel like our services will be pushed more specifically if they have any sort of sales team, right? So generally, I want to form these partnerships with someone in the C-suite. And then I say, get me in front of your sales team. And I'll go through sort of an overview of our services. I'll highlight signals that you should be looking out for that are good fits for us. It just becomes another product that they can sell and make money off of. If they didn't have that incentive, I would be concerned that it wouldn't motivate them to really introduce us.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. Looking back on the different partnerships that you've established to this point, how deep or how important was it for you to really establish a strong relationship with each of these people? Like, was it pretty light? And I don't mean that in a negative way, just that you were just able to kind of introduce yourself, few conversations, and you hatched an agreement? Or was this months or years of deep conversations, really getting to know people personally? What did that kind of journey look like?
All of the partnerships we have, I have very good relationships, generally with like the founder CEO. These are sometimes smaller companies. And sometimes that takes a year in some cases, and others it'll be super quick. But I don't want them to be transactional. All of these partnerships, I'll generally meet with these folks and connect with them pretty regularly, even just to share ideas. There are some under the hood benefits of being, having this group of advisors and trusted folks who I can, if we have challenges, I can ping them and see are they seeing those same things and we can learn together. I've really built the business around that. Like, I have a lot of relationships in the industry we focus in, and it's been critical.
Yeah. All right. So today you're at about 10 people. I'm interested in what that path, kind of the hiring path for you has looked like. So go back to when it's just you, right? You're still working at Amazon, you're validating this idea. Then all of a sudden it hits, you get kind of a longer term, or at least larger size client and engagement come on. From there, fast forward to today, 3 or so years into the business, what are the different hires that you've made to get to the 10 people, in terms of where you're at?
Okay. So it started just me, but I always mentioned that I wanted to build a company. So what I did is I seeded the idea that I had others in my network early on in my first client. So I was working technically, I think 3 days a week for this client. And I was going into their office at the time. And then a month in, COVID happened and it shut down, but was going into their office, and I mentioned to the CMO, who was my core contact, that if you need resourcing here, which I actually highlighted in an area that they needed more resourcing. And I was doing a little bit there, but it was never enough to really drive the needle forward. And so I said, I have folks in my network, just so you know. And he did come to me a couple of weeks later and say, you mentioned that you have some others that might be able to join. Let me know what that looks like. And I created a form on my website called, still up there today, the Fluvio Consultant Network. So these are independent consultants or people that want to do independent consulting could sign up. I would meet with them and I would have their background, and I could come in and bring them in if an opportunity arose. And that did happen, that first engagement. They actually said, we like your idea for building out, at the time I called this area of the business sales marketing, which they did not have. I said, I'm doing core product marketing work, and I'll do a little bit of this sort of like sales collateral development, but really you need a sales marketing department. Like, companies have that. And the CMO came to me and said, that's a great idea. Do you have 2 people that can sort of prove that this is something we should invest in? And so I found 2 contractors. It was in the middle of COVID. So there was some decent talent that was laid off like really quickly, right before this crazy rebound happened. And so I pulled these 2 folks in to be contractors. At the time, I had no idea what I meant to hire, right? All the complexities, it felt overwhelming. A contract is super easy. Brought these 2 in, actually contracted them in with the company, with our client for 5 days a week. So they were actually full-time with the company. And I took something like a 30% margin on that.
So the contractors that you brought in at that time, were they specifying what their fees would be for that work? Or did you have that conversation with them first and you took it to the client? How did that kind of work in terms of the structure?
Yeah. So I actually put together a recommendation to the client and said, all right, so if you want to build it, we need 2 people. This is what that'll look like. This is what the estimated costs will be. Are you cool with that? That'll be a second SOW. They said, great, go find the people. I went, I did some recruiting. I was able to find like 3 or 4 that I really liked. I then put together another presentation to the client, said, here are the 3, 4, here are the pros and cons. Here are their costs based on my conversations with them, what I think they will cost. And I was transparent about the margin that I'd take too, which I think is understood.
So you showed here's the cost, essentially charge you or you're going to pay, but I'll be taking 30% above that. So the client, is that?
Yeah, I didn't explicitly have that in the presentation, but I articulated that. I said, this is what it will cost by a second SOW with Fluvio. And that's because I'm taking 30%, obviously, on what I'm paying them. And so I did that. We agreed on these people. I recruited them, brought them in, contracted them through Fluvio, created a second SOW with the company, added them to my work. And then as we got to the end of that SOW, I wanted to begin to hire. And so I went to one of them and said, I'd like to bring you on board. And he was employee number 1, and he's actually still with us today. And he's awesome. And that worked out really nicely. And so that was the easiest way for me to sort of ramp into hiring. And we've done some contract work after that. But once I was able to bring someone on full-time as a W-2, I then created company benefits, so 401k and health and dental. And now my strategy has been hiring full-time and quickly going into all these benefits because I know that that's our business. I've invested very heavily in talent because that's our business. If I'm not able to get great people and retain great people, then companies aren't going to want to hire us.
Have all your hires at this point, the 10 or so people now, are they all kind of product marketing people that are going to work, or do you have anybody that's working? So there's no kind of business manager?
No, not yet. And we're probably at the point where I should be thinking more strategically about that. But to date, we're hiring everyone who's billable. And I'm no longer in any client work. So I got to a point where it made most sense for me to focus on the strategy for Fluvio, hiring, building services, selling the business, all of that. There was enough time there where it made sense for me to focus there. But now, hopefully, we'll see what happens with the market. It's just every month it's changing. But I do think the next evolution of the company will be, what are the other roles that we can hire for? And one of those might be like an SDR, right? Like, how do we outbound effectively so that I'm not just doing all of this work? We have an accounting firm, a bookkeeper and all of that. Probably will continue to outsource that. But I do think we're at an inflection point in the company, and then I will begin hiring non-consultants.
Yeah. So I want to kind of get your thoughts a little bit on the growth in just a minute. But before we do that, I'd love to hear what was going through your mind when you had the contractors and you're taking a 30% margin, and then you decide, you know what, I want to change everybody to a W-2. I want full-time employees. What was the financial impact to the business of doing that, going from a 30% margin on whatever people are billing to whatever it is today? Because it sounds like, for most people, the hesitation in going from a contractor to a full-time employee is you're making a quote unquote kind of much bigger commitment, right? You're taking on to have to pay a lot more upfront. Walk me through how you kind of rationalize that, how you planned it, and then what did the financial impact look like of going from the 30% margin with the contractors to now having people as full-time?
Yeah. We've evolved the structure of the team and the work we do with clients to make up that margin. So now instead of just having a consultant be full-time with one client, I've actually created another level in the company. We have 2 principals, and principals are much more senior. They are meant to replace me in engagements. They're leading it from a strategy standpoint. They're building executive level relationships. They're meant to drive renewals and really steer the ship. And then consultants are really tactical and doing the work, and they're strategists as well. We hire really talented senior folks, but that's the structure. And that means that we're able to take in more business and allocate consultants across 2 accounts now. So we've tried to make up for that, and we've successfully made up for that. So from a margin business standpoint, that's the model. And I sort of made it up, but it's worked really well. Now the commitment stuff is still there. So we are committing a significant amount of capital every month to our employees. And as a consulting company, it's hard to plan more than, for us at least, 3-6 months out. And so this goes back to my mentality where I do sort of ultimately have a decent amount of confidence in myself, which is now translated into confidence in the business And so I'm making this bet that we'll continue to see growth. We'll continue to be able to fill the plates of our teams, but it's not for everyone. Like if, again, we look out 3 months from now, visibility is pretty light revenue, but it's pretty certain on expenses. And so as I've grown the business, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and want to get into consulting, and they start talking through how I founded the company. And I've told them that my intention has always been to build a company. That's why I'm doing this. I'm passionate about it. If your intention is to do product marketing consulting work and you want flexibility, then you might want to just be an individual independent consultant, because you're going to make good money if you do it right. And you're going to have the flexibility, and you're not going to have the expenses that we have.
You definitely take more risk, but I often find a lot more reward as well once you get through some of the challenges along the way. So speaking of that, for you, I mean, to this point in the business, again, you've accomplished a lot in a pretty short period of time. So that's just congratulations to you and your team, Devon. But what's been one of the biggest challenges to this point in the business that's impacted you, again, inside the business, or maybe even personally as part of trying to climb that ladder?
Oh man, I think predictability into revenue is absolutely a challenge. It will always be a challenge. I think we're trying to figure out how to bring more predictability in. I talk about that outbound motion. The other angle is, how do you plan for how many clients will renew? Like our business, we're not going to be this perpetual team that exists and works with a client. We come in for very specific reasons. We're a little bit more premium. We come get the work done and we're gone. Ideally, we come back for things here and there, but it's very difficult to look, even when we're doing really good work, that doesn't translate to renewals. Like most of the time, clients, their intention is for a set period of time. Planning renewals, matching that up against what we'll see organically come into our pipeline, very challenging. And then the hiring piece is also challenging because we're bootstrapped, we're funded through revenue, and I can't afford to go out there and hire 2 people unless I know that there's new business for them to work on. And I also can't afford to say yes to new business and not have consultants sitting on the bench. It's a constant balance of when do we need to hire, how quickly. It can happen in a day, can mean that we have to hire someone in a week. So
what are you doing with that kind of chicken and egg situation? What have you found is the best approach, or what's working for you to make sure that you can still take on more clients and more work, having the confidence that, you can bring the people in, but not commit to people until you have that? What's been working for you?
So I'm always very open to networking. So I'm meeting with people that are interested in what we're doing and have said, like, are you hiring? I'll meet with them. I'll say, no, we're not, but that can change in a second. So why don't we spend some time? I would like to hear more about you and what you're looking for. And I'll tell you all about our company. And so I'm trying to create these champions across the industry we work in. And so when we do hire and I open a rec, I know I'm going to have maybe a dozen people that are immediately interested because I've already had an ongoing dialogue with them. So that's something. I feel pretty confident in our ability to get really good candidates very quickly because of that long-term work. The other thing is, because we have consultants, we have this pod structure with 1 principal, 3 consultants underneath each principal. There are instances where consultants are on 1 account, and that's totally fine. Of course, I want everyone to be on 2, and we'll operate at capacity and ideal margins, but it's okay if that's not the case. And so we can flex up and down versus some consulting companies that have every consultant's full time with a client. We don't have that. So it's very rarely that a consultant is sitting there with no client. In fact, I don't think it's ever happened. A consultant sitting with no clients. They generally have the ability to flex up and down.
The point that you just made, we often refer to with clients in the terms of like building your bench of talent, right? Just making sure that you always have people around you so that kind of optionality or the opportunity to say yes to something good when it comes your way and not have to go, well, I don't even know if I can handle that, right? So it's a very forward-looking, long-term mindset in terms of kind of preparation and giving yourself that chance. So I think that's fantastic. You guys are doing that. Devon, before wrapping up here today, I want to make sure that people can learn more about you and Fluvio and everything you guys have going on. But first, also, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing a bit of your story. I know there's so much more that we could talk about here today that I think people would be interested in learning about, but I think we've covered some good ground here initially. Where should people go to learn more about you and Fluvio?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about the company and Fluvio, go to fluviomarketing.com. If you want to learn more about what I care about. I am trying to be more and more active. LinkedIn is absolutely my go-to. Certainly connect with me there. And again, I'm very open to networking. At this point, I commit a lot of my time, and I think that that's beneficial to me and also the people that I meet with. So feel free to reach out to me.
All right. Well, I'll linked up in the show notes, everyone. Devon, again, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.